Welcome, everybody, to the VictoryXR podcast. I'm Steve Grubbs, the CEO of VictoryXR, and today we have two great guests, two people I've gotten to know and am very excited to have on. First is Dan Mintz, who is the department chair for IT, Information Technology, at the University of Maryland Global Campus. And then second is Andrew Sedillo, and Andrew is the instructional design lead at New Mexico State University. And he leads the digital learning, which falls under exactly what we do, which is immersive learning, particularly in a synchronous manner. Both of these schools have digital twin campuses, which is interesting because the University of Maryland Global Campus has no actual physical campus. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But also, both of these schools launched classes in the fall of 2022. And so we're going to explore how that's going and try to learn some things as we move forward. So Dan, let's start with you. Tell us, first of all, what your role is at UMGC, and then talk a little bit about why you are involved with immersive learning.
So my day job is I'm in charge of an academic department. My department is responsible for all the degree programs in information technology at the undergraduate and graduate level. So that's my day job. We have one of my programs has, for example, does web and digital design. The reason I mentioned that is they have a certificate in how to create and use augmented and virtual reality objects. We decided to build on that, and we were given permission by our dean and the chief academic officer to go ahead and set up a project to experiment with implementing augmented reality and virtual reality content across the university. And I'm in charge of that program, and we have a whole set of people who, as almost a volunteer second job level, are putting together this program across the university.
That's awesome. Andrew, go ahead and talk a little bit about your role at New Mexico State, and then why you have chosen to get involved with immersive learning.
Yeah, so I have a combination of two major roles that's related to immersive learning. So I'm the instructional design lead for the digital learning team, and I oversee NMSU On Demand, which is NMSU's workforce development program. So what we do is we offer micro credentials about just pretty much anything that you can imagine. And for me, especially working in corporate at my previous position, immersive technology was definitely something that we were exploring. And I know a lot of organizations have started doing it as well for their learning and development programs to train their employees. So it is something that's always been of interest to me. Within digital learning, our vice provost, Sherry Coleman, she was very much a big supporter of using some type of virtual reality learning within our programs in the future. So what happened was she came to us and talked to us about potentially purchasing Metaverse LAN. And Robbie Grant actually was the one who saw your all's presentation with Morehouse College, in which, you know, the first digital twin campus where you all were able to demonstrate exactly what was being done there. And so we took a big interest because we saw the opportunity to then include it into some of our programming as well. So once we saw that, I mean, the rest is history, working with VictoryXR and then starting to then, integrate the digital twin campus into our programs this fall. And then also my other side is I am also an adjunct instructor for the EDLT program as well, which is education, design, learning technology. And so what we do is we're basically educating future educators on how to integrate technology in their classroom. So this was a win-win for everything for me and in both the areas in which I'm involved with.
That's awesome. And Dan, UMGC has a lot of students. Can you tell us approximately how many online students you have currently?
Well, I mean, all of our students take, all of our students take most of their classes online. So a typical fall or spring, which are our larger semesters, we'll have a head count of around 60,000 students, about half that in the summer. A small percentage of our classes are taught in what we call a hybrid, where they might get together one night a week in person, and then the rest of the week would be online. We also teach overseas active duty military students and their families in Europe and Asia, in contract with the Department of Defense and with Veterans Administration to teach over there. But the vast majority of our students are online of all the courses. Stateside, it's about 95% of our classes are online.
So what's interesting is UMGC, Western Governors, Liberty, and a few others have really shown how this online model can work. And you look at the schools that are seeing most of the growth the last 15 years, it's these big online schools, as opposed to those that are strictly drive to campus. So talk to me about, and you and I have had this conversation, but talk to me about why you are pursuing this effort to integrate in some courses virtual reality, and maybe if you could talk a little bit about the use cases specifically.
Yeah, so there's two big reasons. One reason, there's an educational component. I mean, obviously with this, so there are things and activities you can do in the virtual environment that are either too expensive or too dangerous, or even impossible to do in a physical environment, let alone in an online environment. An example, in fact, would be one of the projects we're working with VictoryXR is for our criminal justice classes, both criminal justice and our forensic biology classes. I tell people, when we came up with this part of the project, that's when I learned we had a forensic biology class. But for that, we're setting up a crime scene where there'll be a victim, blood spatters, potentially fingerprints, other clues. It'll be randomly generated, so they can do it multiple times with different setups. That's something that would be almost impossible to do in any environment. So there are educational experiences that an immersive environment can do that you don't get in just a pure online where you're reading text or you're interfacing with people in a Zoom session or something like that. The second thing is, I think all the schools that have gone online find that most of the students are very happy with the flexibility and schedule they get as that allows them to sort of control the timing of the education. But there is a segment of students that lose a certain connection with the educational process and with the institution. And so we think there's a second component that will be true of all universities or all educational institutions that are interfacing to their students online, where you get a much deeper relationship that comes into place because of this virtual connection, the synchronous interaction. Our first class, a Speech 100 class, which did not inherently have immersive simulations or things like that, the feedback we got from our students was they had a much deeper relationship with the other students, which was an interesting result. A much deeper relationship with the faculty member, felt much more connected to the educational process. So those would be the two main reasons, both educational content, but also a relationship engagement issue that I think the online universities have to deal with.
Got it. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And Andrew, I'm not really familiar with how much online or remote learning there is at New Mexico State. Do you primarily use yours for students who are remote learners or on-campus learners?
Yeah, so this fall, we actually used it for 2 remote learner situations. So we actually have NMSU online, which we do have full online programs. And then part of the unit that I work for, which is the instructional design team as well, is what we're doing is we work with instructors, which serve as our subject matter experts, to enhance the learning experiences for our students, especially for those who are transitioning from bringing their typical live courses into an online setting. That's where virtual reality has been awesome. My experience, I got to experience firsthand as the instructor, because it was actually my class as one of the courses that was part of this launch. So just like what Dan said, I've taught for about over 5 years now as an adjunct, and my students are all remote. And this semester was so different it felt different, especially when I would interact with my students. Of course, we'd always do it through web conferencing, but actually having on our virtual reality headsets, our MetaQuest 2s, every week we'd meet for 1 hour every week, and we'd actually, engage in this virtual space. And I felt that social piece was so different. It actually felt that I was really meeting with my students one-on-one. That was a lot of feedback I received from them as well. Some of them have never even attended a course on main campus ever, and this was their first interaction with another student in that way, and they thought that it just enhanced their entire learning experience. And then, just like what Dan said, I mean, that connection between actually doing something, that thing was amazing. I've created online activities, where my students engage in discussions, where they complete actual assignments, where they even present through web conferencing. But when I was able to actually create actual scenarios and learning experiences in which they can then go into and actually do something, it was incredible, especially being someone they're all going to be future teachers. So for example, one activity that I actually had them do was they presented within our digital twin campus an actual lesson that they would provide students in a real classroom. And we sat down, they went ahead and they went through that entire lesson, and it gave them that experience that, like Dan said, they never would be able to get, especially because, it's a 300 level course, and eventually they're going to transition into like more of a practicum, or courses in which they're actually going to be in a practicum. But this was a great way for them to actually practice, and then and I was able to actually have conversations with them and coach them through things unlike anything I've ever been able to do in an online space. So that was just my experience that I'm talking on. But we also had another instructor, which is Gabby Phillips, and she taught a nutrition course also online. And it was actually a dietetic internship in which she was able to meet with students. And the next semester, we actually have an engineering course, and I'll get the other name, but we have 2 courses launching again in spring. And we're really excited about this opportunity to start working with instructors and helping them design immersive learning experience for their students.
Great, thank you, Andrew. And so what's interesting to me is we're on a lot of campuses, and different professors approach it in different ways. There are some that the classes are 100% in VR. Most are hybrid. They'll do a Zoom class or a web conference class, and then once a week go into a lab. But Dan, you talked to me a little bit previously about sort of what I might call a tribrid approach, where they are doing a little bit of web conferencing maybe, and then some of the VR is through a PC and some of the VR is through a headset. Can you talk to us a little bit about that? Well,
of course, we're going through a 2-year project where we're doing a lot of experimentation. So we're trying a bunch of things. So we're trying to combine all those things. So we have both, occasionally we may do things off of what I might call 2D, which is just off a computer system going into interaction. We also want to, from time to then, do some of it 3D, where the headset is required. We're going to be talking about how do we integrate that. For the military, we often are obligated to do at least some physically in person. So we might have combinations of all of these, where some of them are physically in person, but the rest might be online. And we're trying to identify which has greater value and how to measure it. In addition to that, we'll be running this and next semester. We're also looking at using a cohort, so that rather than tying it to any specific class, see whether if we took 10 or 20 students who are in a program and followed them, meeting periodically with the faculty collectively, so they're in multiple classes, but they're part of an overall degree program, and seeing how does that have impact in terms of their career path. And so there's a lot of variety. And if I can tell just one anecdote, one of the things that happens here is this kind of technology both destroys and creates structure. And everyone pays attention to how it destroys it, because it gets rid of geography. You can have sort of what's a class where the people are everywhere, which is interesting. But what it's doing, it's creating structure also, because that classroom feels like a classroom. It has a whole different kind of relationship to there. And just to give you the anecdote I have is, we have a faculty member who's responsible for a journalism class. And he heard about the work we're doing with VictoryXR around the crime scene. And his question was, would it be possible next year, after we get this all working, that he can have his journalism students interview the students who are taking the criminal justice class, so that the journalism students would learn about what it's like to put together a news story associated with a crime, and the criminal justice students would learn what it's like to deal with journalism. That was completely came off the cuff. It never would have occurred even in a traditional setting to do that, because it's so hard to overcome geography. But on one hand, but this both creates and destroys it, so that makes it easy to think of that conceptually to do. It's remarkable.
What I love is that, so, we all went to college, we all sat in a row of chairs in a, square or rectangular classroom. And essentially, I can't ever remember leaving the classroom in college. I was a finance major, so we didn't have much reason to. But what I love is the fact that a professor can take students to more than one location during class. They could go to a crime scene. They could go to, on a field trip in another country, everybody traveling together. And it just opens up, first of all, students remain interested. There's frequently when I was doodling during my classes, but, I got to think that, and we know from studies about retention that students are more focused, they retain more information. So all of that is a benefit. Andrew, talk to us a little bit. What are the challenges that, either the technology, the hardware, VictoryXR, what are some of the challenges that we still need to overcome during the next couple of years?
Yeah, I think some of the challenges is just understanding that you're gonna have a lot of first-time users who have never used virtual reality. And to us, because we use it, pretty often, it's very important that you always have to have that understanding that that's what's going to happen. Is my students, maybe 2 people had ever used a virtual reality headset, and those experiences were like at a Chuck E. Cheese or something like that, like an arcade. But one thing is just to understand is you need to dedicate some time for that training. And, you all did a fantastic job of definitely providing that to students, but it does take some extra time also from the instructor. What I would recommend anyone who's interested in using virtual reality in their space is to actually use it and think about what challenges you may face, so that way you're prepared for it. So for example, when I would meet with students, although they went through the training, they didn't have any problems at certain times, but then there would be times where they couldn't log into their headset. And like a simple way to troubleshoot was, we would start off in Zoom, and what I would do is we'd go ahead and go through a lecture. And then when we were going to our virtual space, I kept my window open. So when everyone's actually putting on their headset, if there's any technological problems, I'm able to jump in right away and assist that user, versus like, hey, my headset's not working. I have my headset on my face, so I'm not seeing messages, right? So I would just keep that on. So it's just kind of being aware of just having a backup plans on what to do in those type of situations. And then also too, even I found having a lot of conversations about their experiences is very important as well. So I made sure to do surveys every time at the end of every module, because some of their activities required them to actually put on virtual reality headsets, actually create things in that space, and would send over the file through Canvas that I was able to then put into my headset and watch them deliver things. But I was able to get a lot of information from them, such as like for example, after 30 minutes, some of them complained that their eyes were hurting them. And so I would, meet with them to talk about how to adjust their headset. Some of them would say that they would have their headset on, or that they would become dizzy, after 15 minutes. Like, those conversations need to be had too with the students, because you want them to have a very good learning experience with using this VR headset, so they don't have that negative experience where they're like, I don't ever want to use it again. So it's having those conversations, understanding that not everything's going to work 100%, and then just having something in place on how you can troubleshoot and just make things right for students, and then also just understand what you can do too when technology does backfire. I think is really important.
Okay, and you took it on yourself to create training videos for other educators that will be educating in VR. Talk to us a little bit about what you're doing and where people can find those.
Yeah. So with me, I do a combination things. So I have a toddler, and so a toddler keeps me up at night, right? And so I'm up early in the morning. And something that I've always been passionate about as a youngster was just kind of the art of video. And so I've always liked filmmaking, right? So with me, my love for like the idea of filmmaking and then also learning has been very important. So and also just getting people to buy into virtual reality, because I really truly see this as the next phase of communication. And the thing, kind of backtrack of what I always tell people is, think about early on, right? We communicated through radio, and then we went through TV, and then we went through the internet, and now we have social media, and virtual reality, Web3 is what you're seeing next, right? And so for me, I want people to understand that, hey, this isn't all video games, right? This is going to be something that's going to impact learning. It's going to enhance communication, and your students are going to absolutely love it. So for me, one thing that was very important is that as I'm learning this technology and as I struggle through these things, the best way to really educate myself is to teach others how to do it. So as I learn new things, such as features on the Engage app, new features with the MetaQuest 2s that I think could provide students ultimately with an amazing learning experience, I like to create learning videos that others can benefit from, of the things that I found. So that way, as you begin to think about how you're going to integrate technology or integrate VR into your classrooms, I want to have a bunch of resources that you can check out, because I'm an educator myself. I'm going through the same thing you all are, that you can refer to and find other ways of how you can utilize some of the features that are currently available to you. And so I took it upon myself, but it's something I like doing, and I share on LinkedIn because I find that I see posts from people saying, oh, I don't know about the metaverse. I don't know if I'm really interested in that. And I see a lot of positive posts like, oh, this is great. I just don't know how to integrate it into my space. So to me, one thing that was very important is, hey, this is a great network of people that I can share what I'm learning to. And as I go through these things, I have no problem showing you how I'm doing it. So that way, then you can begin doing it, and we can start conversating and learn from each other. So
And
that's been something that's been very important to me.
where do they find these?
On LinkedIn. So I have my LinkedIn page. You can just look me up on Andrew Sedillo. I'm on LinkedIn. I set up a YouTube, but I haven't really uploaded that too much. But LinkedIn's the #1 spot where I'm posting all of this.
Good. Thank you, Andrew. And Dan, what challenges do we need to overcome to succeed at UMGC?
So first of all, I'd like to echo Andrew. The only way you can really figure this stuff out is to do it. I mean, you really, it's too different, and you need to introduce people to it and try it out. I'd say the big issue. Well, there are two issues. One issue is, of course, content and what we're going to use it for. But I think that'll come with experience. I mean, that the anecdote I told you, people, once they use it, they start thinking of new ways to use it more. The other issue, though, is there are operational implications that you're not going to really realize until you do it. Does everyone need a headset? What are you going to do with the headsets? Do you buy them for the students? Do you request the students to buy it? Do you charge them a fee? If you're going to send it, you have the students use it and return it, how are you going to sanitize it and reset it? Who are the people assigned to handling headsets? There's not a lot of universities that have the headset management department yet. So, and I could go on. I mean, there's even issues of financial aid. That is, how do you structure this in a way that financial aid will cover the costs? And if you don't think about that, it isn't an automatic thing. So one of the reasons we're doing this 2-year pilot, where we hope to run somewhere between 13 and 15 courses this year, and then additional courses next year, is to experiment with each of the things we talked about, both the content and how we can maximize that use, and the operational issues and what we're going to have to do as a university to be able to make it a viable activity over the the thousands of students we have.
Well, and one of the great things you've done with us is helped us to figure out how to create a rental program so that students don't have to buy a headset, so that they can rent it, and then we can manage the shipping and the return shipping and the sanitizing it and all of those issues. And even though that there's a lot to be done with that, I think that's probably going to be an early solution until headsets just become more ubiquitous, or AR glasses, or whatever the case might be. So Dan, talk to us a little bit about your digital twin campus. And I think we all recognize that we can do this without a digital twin campus, but most of the universities we visit with find value in it. What are your thoughts on that, the campus that we built for UMGC?
So it's interesting. So I started off by being a great skeptic. I said, well, it was the fact that we would get it as part of this relationship was a plus, but my first thought was, who cares? And I was wrong. It turns out that while the educational process is enhanced by specific simulations or experiences, that the campus is both a good focal point. So, for example, I mentioned that, and I think Andrew mentioned how the relationship is much deeper through this stuff. The campus and the classrooms connected to it, and to some extent the worlds connected to that, as places to go, provide a very good focus for making students feel that they're part of the institution and have this interaction. So that has a dramatic impact, and I completely underestimated that. It also, it turns out, from a marketing and discussion point to what we're doing, it's very convenient to have that campus there when we do demos, when we're talking even internally at the university, when we want to explain what we're doing. It's very good thing to have that campus. We have people visit us on the campus. And just to give an example, EDUCAUSE, which is a very active organization in the educational community, has an extended reality special interest group that's now meeting once a month on site, and their second meeting will be held on our campus, where the faculty will be coming to visit the virtual campus. So I didn't really think through, but learned with experience, that it can be both a focal point for the academic community. It also can be a focal point for interacting with your partners and things like that. And so it has a value, and it was unexpected. And as you said, in a sense, we have a digital singleton. Everybody else has a digital twin. It was our very first campus.
Love that.
We had.
Andrew, talk to us about our approach on your campus, which I've seen your campus, and it's a very sort of modern design. So talk to us a little bit about how you utilize your digital twin.
Yeah, so I utilize it in different ways. So like Dan was saying, one thing that our team's really excited about doing, for example, is our team right now is a lot of it's remote. We have people from all over that are all part of this team. We have people from Florida, Denver, New Mexico. I mean, you name it. Anyways, one thing that we just actually, I'm happy Dan brought it up, is we recently had a meeting, right, where some members of our team was meeting with instructors, and we were live, the ones who were remote, from the little webcams that are on the side of the room, and it's facing the actual meeting table. So as the person on the other side, although yes, I could conversate, I could hear what's going on, I didn't feel as active in it. So what we've already discussed is, like Dan was saying, we want to have more meetings in this metaverse space now on our Metaversity. So rather than us meeting, in these traditional rooms with the little webcam that's facing the meeting room, we can now all be around that same table with one another and actually interact and share items. So it's one thing I'm really excited about. But as far as our use here with what you all have created, it's been wonderful. Like I mentioned, we've been able to provide actual online instruction in our classrooms, our virtual classrooms that feel very much like as if you're actually there. You could sit there wherever you want in any seat. You can give students access to the presentation tools where they could present as they normally would. One thing that I think is great as well is that they can actually put whiteboards in front of them. They can put note tools, they can put screens in front of them. And as they're sitting down, it's no longer that challenge, right? Where we've all faced in those classes where you're trying to look at that whiteboard and you're looking at those notes and you're trying to get your notes. You have that all in front of you now, like through this virtual space, which has been great. I think that my students, I'm speaking like on my experience for sure, because they've been able to experience that active learning experience, right? Where they're able to actually do things, move around. They're not just sitting seated behind a camera or with the camera on or off. They're actually in the environment. They're interacting with one another. We're able to explore. And it's been really exciting because it's opened us also opportunities to get to know other faculty members. So as we started doing the announcement of our Metaversity, we have alumni reaching out to us, other faculty members that are just curious about going into virtual reality. They haven't really thought about yet how they're going to use it in their classrooms, but they want to explore the campus. So we've been able to actually invite them in and have these meetings, or just have them take them on an actual tour through our campus and have conversations and get to know each other. And now we're speaking, regularly through email about, hey, how are we going to tie in this Metaversity into what you all are currently doing now that you've got to experience it. So I think that's been great, having those new connections and even being invited to other people's classrooms where, again, they use some virtual reality, not necessarily using our Metaversity campus, but where we're able to then take their students, give them a tour, and then now they're thinking about, okay, how am I going to use this in the fall? So that's kind of where we're at.
So I very much appreciate you sharing your knowledge. What I would like you to do, Dan, would you tell people how, if they wanted to reach out to you, how would you like them to contact you?
Well, email is fine, and I'll be glad to set up a meeting after that. Daniel.mintz, M-I-N-T-Z, at UMGC.edu.
Okay, and we'll also put that up on the screen. How about you, Andrew?
Yeah, feel free to contact me if you have any questions. Our team's super excited about this. You can find me on LinkedIn at Andrew Sedillo, or you can find me or email me at andrew10@nmsu.edu.
Okay, we'll also put that on the screen. So, well, thank you very much, both of you. It's exciting to watch what happens, and what we are doing this semester literally will define higher education for the next 20 years. And so it's a tall task, but so far so good. So thank you, everybody. We appreciate you joining us. You can hear this either on a podcast, you can go to our blog where it'll be transcribed, or of course on YouTube.